Good morning, I'm Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, stop the surge. Promising new reporting on the COVID front this morning. We could be just a day away from seeing the FDA greenlight Pfizer's COVID booster shot for all American adults, granting extra protection to tens of millions, just in time for that Thanksgiving dinner. That as cases continue to rise from coast to coast, with hotspots now developing in New England. And another sign of hope this morning as we head into the holidays, the Biden administration's massive deal to buy millions of doses of Pfizer's COVID pill. Deciding his fate, jury deliberations in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse resumed this morning after day one passes without a verdict. The teen randomly choosing the 7 women and 5 men, nearly all white, who will weigh his case. We're going to take you outside the courtroom. Plus, state of emergency. Thousands in the Pacific Northwest are waking up without power this morning after a massive storm system brought record-setting rains, driving winds, and terrifying mudslides. Some people having to be evacuated, others trapped inside their homes. Our team is on the ground with the latest. And game changer, a potential breakthrough in Alzheimer's treatment and prevention. One Boston hospital now launching a landmark human trial of an experimental vaccine designed to slow and maybe even prevent the disease affecting millions of Americans. Later in the hour, we're going to speak with the doctor who is leading the charge. We're excited to bring you that story.
Yeah, that is fascinating. And talking about a different vaccine.
Exactly.
That's something that could help so many families.
A reminder of all the research that's going on out there for so many important things. We'll get to that in a little bit. We're going to begin this hour with news that federal health agencies could authorize Pfizer's COVID boosters for all adults as early as tomorrow. That'd be a key step in delivering more treatments to Americans in the fight against coronavirus.
Yeah, the FDA's decision on Pfizer's booster shot comes as state and local officials try and stem troubling new signs of a winter spike. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson joins us now from Times Square in New York City with more. Hi, Ann. Good morning.
Good morning, Savannah and Joe. The FDA and CDC are trying to play catch up with the states. Those two organizations will discuss expanding booster eligibility at the end of this week. Certainly a hopeful sign as we go into the Thanksgiving Day holidays. And here in New York City, we have another reason to smile as officials announce Times Square's New Year's Eve celebration is back on.
In a matter of days, Pfizer's COVID booster could get the green light for people 18 years and older who are 6 months out from their second dose, paving the way for tens of millions of Americans to get another shot.
It's going to be very important for people to get the booster shot.
Pfizer is also asking the FDA to authorize emergency use of its COVID antiviral pill. The company says its clinical trials show the pill reduces the risk of hospitalization and death by 89% in people at high risk of severe illness. The Biden administration planning to buy enough pills for 10 million people, hoping they'll curb the winter uptick, along with that booster rollout. Here in New York City, adult residents welcoming the extra jab.
Hopefully it's more of a Christmas 2019. We can enjoy our family.
New York, one of a handful of states and cities already expanding booster eligibility to all adults amid a troubling surge in cases. In Vermont, a nation-leading 72% of residents there are fully vaccinated. But the state's 2-week case count jumped 60%. Most of the new cases, unvaccinated people. Across New England, the 2-week case count is up in every state except Connecticut. But even there, deadly outbreaks. At the Gear Village senior community, 8 residents died from COVID. A total of 89 residents and staff got infected just over the last month and a half. Almost everyone had been vaccinated. But health officials still emphasizing that vaccines will make the difference this holiday season.
If you have a vaccinated group, then you could enjoy the winter and enjoy being at home for the holidays indoors without worrying about masks.
And New York City plans to send 2021 out in style, just like it used to before the pandemic, with crowds, performances, and controlled pandemonium at midnight.
If we want it to be a great New York celebration,
If you want to come down here and join the crowds on New Year's Eve, there is a price to pay. You have to show proof of admission along with your ID in order to get down here and see the ball drop in person. Savannah and Joe?
All right, Ann, thanks so much.
Let's bring in Dr. Naheed Badalia, the founding director for Boston University's Center for Emerging Infectious Diseases Policy and Research. Doctor, good to have you with us. So as we wait for the news from the FDA, walk us through how critical a role these booster shots could play in trying to prevent another winter surge here in the U.S.
Yeah, Joe, since September, when the boosters were first presented for a limited number of people, what you've seen is increasing evidence, right, that initially we were seeing loss of protection against severe disease and hospitalization against only those who are older in the data that was coming out from Israel. And the question was, is it because they're older, we see that drop in many older patients as well for other vaccines, or is it just that the other folks who've gotten vaccinated haven't gotten to a point, maybe the 6-month mark, where you might see that? And in fact, we are seeing waning immunity in all population groups, and there's data from UK that those over 50, particularly the protection against symptomatic disease can be restored up to the 90s from 60s currently in the age of Delta. So there is a benefit. I think that what you're seeing is that boosters can protect you more from this symptomatic disease, but maybe you can also avert, if you don't get infected, it can avert transmission to other people. However, I do want to put a pin mark in there. 2 caveats. One, all the surges that you're seeing, majority of them are still driven by people who haven't even gotten their first doses. Even in Vermont, the areas that are seeing surges, for example, are those in rural Northeast area that there haven't been as many first doses given. And so that, and the second bit is the boosters are helping. The protection is greatest in those who are over 50. So rush, if you're over 40 or 50, rush to get that booster, because that's where we're seeing the greatest benefits going into the winter.
Doctor, let's break down these 2 tools for people. What are the differences between Pfizer's booster shot and its antiviral pill? What should Americans know about each of them and how they target COVID differently?
Yeah, they're both tools in a larger toolbox. It's not an either or, right? Vaccines are supposed to prevent infections, and they do. Even in the age of Delta with 2 doses, what we saw is that they drop the chances of you getting infected by 5 times. And they drop the chance of getting hospitalized by 12 times. And so you got to get the vaccine. If you end up getting an infection despite that protection, because, high community transmission, immunity is waning, then an antiviral pill is supposed to keep you from getting sick enough to go to the hospital. The caveat being here, it's not approved yet, as you know. It's just being submitted to the FDA. So it may not come in time for maybe the worst weeks of the surge in this winter.
And quickly, I want to follow up on something you mentioned in my first question, the reports from New England about the hot spots in places like Vermont. I mean, given Vermont has that 72% vaccination rate, can you quickly tell us how concerned should we be about cases rising there?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think that what they're seeing is particular counties that are driving this. And the Vermont public health officials have said that many of these are in rural Northeast counties that have lower rates than the state average as well, where people haven't gotten their first doses. But you are seeing an increase in everybody, right? And part of this is Delta hasn't really hit Northeast. And 2, potentially, as we saw, there might be some waning of immunity after those 2 doses. All
right. Dr. Badalia, as always, thanks so much.
This morning, the city of Kenosha, Wisconsin, is awaiting a verdict as the jury resumes deliberations in the Kyle Rittenhouse homicide trial. Rittenhouse faces 5 felony charges, including intentional homicide after killing 2 men and injuring a third in the unrest following the police shooting of Jacob Blake last summer. NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has been following developments there in Kenosha. Hi, Gabe. Good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning. High drama here at the courthouse as we await a possible verdict. The jury has asked no specific questions of the judge so far, only requesting more copies of jury instructions. This morning, the nation waiting on the decision of 12 jurors who will decide the fate of Kyle Rittenhouse.
All right, folks, you can retire to consider your verdicts.
With small demonstrations outside the courthouse, hundreds of National Guard troops are on standby, but not yet deployed as the second day of deliberations begins. And in a striking image Tuesday, Rittenhouse himself determining his own jury. 18 men and women had sat through the trial. The judge allowed the defendant to draw 6 names at random from a lottery drum, as is custom in his courtroom, but not others. Those 6 alternate jurors will stay in a separate room while the other 12 deliberate. The final makeup, 7 women and 5 men, including 1 person of color.
If the jury finds that Rittenhouse provoked the initial attack, then Rittenhouse may lose the argument of self-defense completely.
Rittenhouse is charged with 5 felony counts, the most serious first-degree intentional homicide. If convicted, he faces up to life in prison. Last August, during protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, over the police shooting of a black man, Jacob Blake, Rittenhouse shot and killed 2 men and wounded a third. The case now at the center of a national debate over gun violence. Rittenhouse's supporters say he tried to stop rioters.
Do you view this as an attack on the Second Amendment?
Yes. People say he was a vigilante, but he was one of us going out and protecting the community.
But for the girlfriend of Anthony Huber, the second man Rittenhouse shot and killed, the trial is about accountability.
I think that real justice, honestly, would be at least, at the bare minimum, just some consequence for his actions.
Rittenhouse says that he acted in self-defense. His defense team has also been working with a high-profile jury consultant who also worked on the O.J. Simpson trial. Again, day 2 of jury deliberations is set to get underway in just a few hours, Savannah.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, who's been following it all, thank you so much.
Today, President Biden is heading to Detroit to see a massive new General Motors factory. It's dedicated to building only battery-powered vehicles, starting with an iconic American truck, the Hummer. The CEO of GM gave NBC News correspondent Tom Costello an exclusive tour. Tom joins us from a nearby dealership now. Hey, Tom, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. You know, both Ford and GM have been around for 100 years making gas-powered engines, right? But Ford has said that within 9 years, 40% of their fleet will be battery-powered. GM says 5 years later, 100% of GM's will be, in fact, battery-powered. And that is why President Biden is coming here today.
On the assembly lines in Detroit, a dramatic revolution is underway at lightning speed. Fierce competitors Ford and General Motors joining a global green movement, with GM making the boldest commitment. All of its models will be electric by 2035, just 14 years away. Not a lot of time. To make it happen, GM has spent $2.2 billion on this, Factory Zero. CEO Mary Barra gave us an exclusive tour.
How much consumer demand is there to go all electric?
Well, we see it increasing, and I think we're actually getting close to a tipping point where consumers now are much more willing to consider an all-electric vehicle because they see the benefit.
Look no further than the Hummer, an iconic American brand now going electric. 350 miles on a single charge.
This is the battery. 3,000 pounds of lithium-ion cells helping the Hummer to accelerate from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds.
GM and Ford both want a chunk of the battery car market dominated by Elon Musk and Tesla.
We believe in climate change. It's real, and so we know that transportation has a huge impact.
Factory Zero itself symbolizes GM's total shift from gasoline engines to batteries. Built in the 1980s, it was slated to be closed with 1,000 jobs on the line. Then a last-minute reprieve. Now a high-tech robotic hub with 2,000 employees, giving financial stability to workers like Monique Watson and her family.
I know that I'm going to be able to provide for my family, provide for my children.
One immediate hurdle, the global supply chain slowdown stretching to China. The computer chips used in every new car and truck come from Asia. Barra says the slowdown and shortages could last well into next year.
There'll probably be a small tail into 2023, but, I think by that point in time, we'll get back to, I'll call it a new normal.
Yeah, the new normal. In other words, it's going to take a while for the supply chain issues to work out. But because computer chips are in everything these days, every consumer good, we're going to be dealing with a computer chip shortage for a while. And by the way, in that infrastructure bill, you guys, they have allocated money for a network of charging stations nationwide. And that is one reason President Biden is going to be at Factory Zero today. By the way, Joe and Savannah, listen to this. On the new EVs, right? What do you call the gas pedal? There's no gas. They're going to change the name. It's now going to be called the Go pedal. Back to you guys.
Oh, we're going to have to get that into our lexicon. All right.
Yeah, really.
Good. I like that. All right, the Go pedal. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. The cleanup continues this morning in the Pacific Northwest after a devastating storm impacted people in both Washington state and Canada. NBC News correspondent Miguel Almaguer is in Ferndale, Washington with more.
Savannah and Joe, good morning. This storm has already turned deadly on the Canadian side of the border, and it's believed it cost at least one life here in Washington state. While the water is quickly receding in many areas, the threat isn't over yet.
The Pacific Northwest bracing for more bad weather this week as it tries to recover from its most recent devastating deluge that lasted for days. The results, record rain, widespread flooding, and deadly mudslides.
I mean, that's a power, and the force of the water is amazing.
The storm pushing rainfall totals in Seattle to new record highs, some 40 inches completely soaking the area in just 31 days. In northern Washington state, floodwaters sweeping away this father of four. Neighbors say his wife fears the worst.
She was kneeling in water, just sobbing.
More than 500 people forced to scramble out of their homes for safety.
There was nothing in our house in less than 30 minutes. It was up to our knees, our ankles, and outside in our yard. For me, it was like up to my waist in some spots.
How scared were you?
Terrified.
The peril on both sides of the border. Helicopters in Canada airlifting more than 300 people to safety as highways buckled and roads crumbled. A deadly landslide trapping drivers in their cars.
Something just told me that we got to go forward and see if there's somebody in there. And there was.
Back in Washington state, crews are working to clear highways, but as floodwaters start to recede, the struggle to recover begins.
It's hard because there's a lot of stuff that's just going to go to loss because of this.
This morning, a region known for rain still flooded under feet of misery.
Adding insult to injury out west here, 90% of this region remains in an extreme drought. This is one of the very few areas that simply did not need more water. Savannah and Joe, back to you guys.
All right, Miguel Almaguer from Washington for us. Thank you so much.
Let's get a check on your morning news now weather after looking at those incredible pictures.
Yeah, hi, Bill Cairns. Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm still, the go pedal is still bothering me. I just sat there for the last 3 minutes trying to think of all the different names that'd be better than the go pedal. You know, like the accelerator, the speed pedal, the honey hurry up pedal. I mean.
Yeah, I don't really think I like go pedal either. Yeah.
We'll brainstorm some options and we'll come back together and we'll come up with something better to pitch to GM.
We'll petition that one. Yeah, I don't think go pedal is going to stick. All right, let's get into the storm because we were just talking and showing you the incredible pictures from Washington State and all the devastation and the recovery that's going to take months because of those road repairs that are going to be needed. So this storm is pushing to the east, and there's not a lot of snow or rain with it. It's mostly a big difference in temperatures. Arctic air is behind the cold front. Ahead of it is like spring or summer-like warmth today. I mean, it's pretty incredible how warm it's going to be. Shreveport and Dallas near 80, 70s all the way up to Nashville, 60s into Detroit and St. Louis. I mean, they just saw some snowflakes in Detroit, and now it's 62 degrees. That comes to a crashing halt, though, as that cold front moves through. Temperatures tomorrow will drop into the 40s and 50s, a good 20 degrees cooler than what you're seeing today. So let's fast forward into the weekend. That cooler air makes it to the East Coast on Friday. Again, not a lot of travel issues, not a lot of wet weather on the map, so it's a pretty good Friday out there. And anyone traveling on Saturday getting ahead of the curve for the upcoming Thanksgiving period, too. It looks pretty nice Saturday and no complaints really on Sunday unless you're in Minnesota. But if you're in Minnesota, you probably want a little bit of snow. The snowmobilers get excited at least, especially northern Minnesota. That'll be the only weather concern on the map. Now, I hinted yesterday at the potential for a pretty good-sized storm as we head towards next week during the busy travel period. It does look like that storm will come up through New England Monday into Tuesday. At this point, it looks mostly like a rain event with strong winds on the backside. At this time, guys, it does not look like a big snow or ice storm, so that would be good for travel. But we'll keep an eye on it. That's still 6 days away.
Yeah, that's a big travel day, I hear. All right. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Now, before we go to break, we want to remind you our own Hallie Jackson has a new show launching today on NBC News Now. We're expanding here. Hallie will bring us in-depth reporting from Washington on all the biggest stories of the day. You can catch her show every day starting today at 5 p.m. Eastern right here on NBC News Now. We are looking forward to that. And we've got so much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now. We'll take you to Eastern Europe, where a migrant crisis on the Poland-Belarus border is now boiling over with violent incidents.
And to Afghanistan, where just months after the Taliban's takeover, a different kind of humanitarian crisis is brewing: malnutrition. We're going to take you around the world next. Welcome back. The migrant crisis growing at the border of Belarus and Poland has now taken a violent turn. Polish forces used water cannons and tear gas against people trying to cross into the country.
Thousands remain trapped along the border, facing desperate and increasingly freezing conditions. NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley has the story.
The growing crisis at the border of Poland and Belarus descending into violence and chaos. Migrants stranded between the two countries for more than a week, growing desperate, hurling rocks and sticks at a line of Polish guards. Heavily armed Polish forces responding with tear gas and stun grenades, shooting water cannons at the crowds trying to enter Poland. The migrants retreating to their makeshift shelters, now soaking wet, bracing for another night in the freezing cold.
We are waiting. We don't know what will happen.
Poland has repeatedly accused Belarus of engineering the surge, overnight releasing this video, which it says shows Belarusian authorities tearing down barbed wire fences, allowing the migrants to illegally cross. Poland and its allies say it's an attempt by Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko to destabilize the region. A form of revenge for sanctions imposed by the EU after Lukashenko violently quashed pro-democracy protests following the country's elections last summer. Lukashenko luring thousands of migrants to Belarus, enticing them with easy tourist visas from across the Middle East and Africa, then busing them to the border with Poland. NATO officials today sounding the alarm about the use of human lives as sacrificial pawns.
We are deeply concerned about the way the Lukashenko regime is using vulnerable migrants as a hybrid tactic against other countries, and this is actually putting life of the migrants at risk.
Belarus has denied facilitating the migrant crossings. Lukashenko today saying, quote, an escalation is not in the interests of either the European Union or Belarus. Still, thousands of men, women, and children remain trapped in no man's land, unable to get into Poland and hesitant to return to the countries they were fleeing. Among the stranded, 9-year-old Taman, a double amputee living with a rare bone disease. He and his family fled Iraq, hoping to find a better life in Europe, only to be left helpless at its doorstep.
Please help him. His children need a better life than right now. He's need to go into the Europe.
The problems aren't just on the Belarusian side of the border. International human rights groups are also complaining about Poland's massive militarization on their side of the border. And with neither side looking like they're going to give up anytime soon, it's hard to see how this all ends. 11 people have died so far on that border. And with temperatures plummeting, that number is likely to go up.
Our thanks to Matt Bradley for that report.
Now to Afghanistan, which is hurtling toward a devastating humanitarian crisis. 3 months after the Taliban takeover, malnutrition is growing across the country, and the UN says nearly 23 million people could face acute hunger over the coming winter months. The situation has become so bad that some families are taking desperate steps to avoid starvation. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has more.
A nurse at a clinic in Herat run by Doctors Without Borders measures Farzana's arm. If the band goes red, she's severely malnourished. Farzana is nearly at the end of the scale, weighing 6.5 pounds at 8 months old. Farzana's mother used to give her formula, but now can't afford it after her husband lost his job. A baby dies of starvation nearly every day at this clinic. Occupancy is up 70% compared to last year. Some are 2 to a bed. Ali Umar's mother was herself malnourished, so the baby was born too weak to suckle.
My husband is a house painter, but he sold his tools so we could feed the baby. Things have gotten worse since the Taliban came. What little we had went to zero.
The babies here are given a fortified blend of formula. About a third were already vulnerable, like Imran, who has a neurological disorder. The 3-year-old can't walk or talk. Now he's starving too. Jawad barely weighs 3 pounds. Many of the poorest in Herat live on the outskirts of the city. Here, the elders say work has disappeared since the Taliban took over and prices have gone up. Then Murad Khan, a day worker, made a shocking admission. Look, behind you. You see her? Come here, he says. I swear to God, is she old enough to marry? No, but I sold her. His daughter, Benazir, is 8 years old. She was sold to another family to marry one of their sons when she reaches puberty.
Do you know what we're talking about?
Benazir doesn't answer, but seems to want to disappear. The buyers haven't paid for Benazir yet. The agreed price, her dowry, is $2,000. As soon as they pay it, they'll come to collect her. Benazir's family survive by begging. They burn trash to bake bread because they can't afford wood. Benazir keeps the bread close to her heart whenever she's lucky enough to get a piece. Benazir's sister, Nazia, lies sick. Her father thinks from the plastic fumes.
Oh, she does have a fever. She's burning up. Have you had anything to eat or drink? No. Nothing?
Benazir and her best friend Saliha go to fetch water. The local mosque is kind enough to let them fill their pails. Saliha has been sold too. She's 7. The two girls walk back home. Benazir in just torn socks, even as she crosses a rocky path. Saliha's father says he knows she's too young, but that he had a terrible choice to make. Take the dowry now, or watch all the family starve.
I'm forced to do this. I'm keeping 5 alive. One has to be sacrificed.
Benazir and Saliha sit alone by their homes. The other girls, who like many here use henna to dye their hair red, keep a little distance. Perhaps wary, they too will soon become hunger brides.
Oh, Richard, thank you so much for that report.
Let's take a look at what else is making news around the world this morning.
Claudio Lubanga is back with us from Rome this hour. Hey there.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Joe. Well, Naomi Osaka, the world former #1 tennis player, is among a growing number of athletes who've expressed concern over the whereabouts of Peng Shuai, the Chinese tennis player who hasn't appeared in public since she accused the former vice premier of China of sexually assaulting her. Now, the Women Tennis Association also said that they don't know where Shuai is, but they said that they received assurances that she is safe. Now, let's move to the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan, where tensions flared up once again on Tuesday over the long disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Now, on Tuesday, Armenia said that one of its soldiers was killed and 12 others were captured by Azerbaijan, sparking new fears that the war between them could be reignited. But fortunately, since then, a ceasefire that was mediated by Russia was agreed by both countries. And last but not least, today is the Guinness World Records Day. So let me list a number of new records here. There's the most consecutive cars jumped over on a pogo stick, the most single-leg backwards somersault in 30 seconds, but the favorite, guys, must be the Chinese man who broke the record for the fastest time to pull a car, a big car, 50 meters. And if you think that that was easy, he did that walking on hands. If you think that that was easy, he did that backwards.
Are there a lot of people doing that? Is it like a thing? Is it like
this is how we tow away cars here in Italy.
There we go. It's a profession. Okay, now I understand it all. All right.
Wow, I just don't even know what to say about that. Thank you so much.
All right, coming up on Morning News Now, a potential game changer in the fight against Alzheimer's, an experimental nasal vaccine now going through human trials at one Boston hospital. We're going to talk to the doctor who's leading the research.
And if you're planning to hit the highways or skies this Thanksgiving, we've got some bad news. No matter which way you plan to travel, you might be in for a bumpy ride. We'll explain next. Welcome back. What's in a name? Well, when it comes to the naming rights of sports arenas, turns out there's a lot of money in it. And now the longtime home of the Los Angeles Lakers, Clippers, Sparks, and Kings is getting a new name. The iconic Staples Center in downtown Los Angeles will be renamed to, get this, Crypto.com Arena. A 20-year naming rights deal was reached between Staples Center owner AEG and the cryptocurrency platform. The price tag, reportedly some $700 million, which would be one of the richest naming rights deals in sports history. The 20,000-seat arena opened back in 1999, and fans will get to see the new name firsthand on Christmas Day when the Lakers take on the Brooklyn Nets, not at the Staples Center.
I mean, it's weird enough for it not to be Staples, and then the new name is another level of weird.
Yeah, what is it again?
Crypto.com. All right.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's a
$700 million,
right.
too. Yeah, exactly.
Now to a potential game changer for the millions of Americans living with Alzheimer's. Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston is launching the first ever human trial for a nasal vaccine for the disease. The vaccine could prevent and slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease. Joining us now is someone who's leading those trials. Dr. Howard Weiner is the Robert L. Kroc Professor of Neurology at Brigham and Women's Hospital. Doctor, good to have you with us. I mean, first of all, just explain to us, how does this vaccine work, especially for people with Alzheimer's and those at risk?
Well, the way the vaccine works is actually very simple. After it's given, it stimulates the immune system, or white blood cells in our body. They are stimulated in the bloodstream, then they go to the brain and clear out the disease protein in the brain.
Doctor, let's talk about the trial. Who's involved and how does the trial work?
Well, the trial is going to go through several stages. The first trial, which will dose the first patient in a couple of weeks, we're going to test different doses to find out which dose of the vaccine works best. There'll be 2 doses 2 weeks apart, sort of like COVID. When we find out what the best dose is, which will take about 6 months, we'll then go into a 150-patient trial with different doses and a control group. After that, if it works, we go into a phase 3 trial, which will allow for it to be registered by the FDA, of course, if successful.
The CDC says Alzheimer's is the 5th leading cause of death for Americans who are over the age of 65. So what does the timeline potentially look like on this vaccine? I mean, what would you hope, if the trial goes well, would be when this could be available to millions battling Alzheimer's?
Well, we're hoping, if all goes well, that in 5 or 6 years, doctors could prescribe it. It could be given to people who have mild or more severe Alzheimer's, but even more important, it could be given to prevent the disease. Not everybody knows, but people in their 50s and 60s, some of them are already getting Alzheimer's without any symptoms. So they can be tested, and then they can be given the vaccine to prevent it, sort of like you treat blood pressure to prevent heart disease or stroke.
And doctor, I mean, this trial is nearly 20 years in the making for you and your colleagues. What does it mean for you to be at this moment in your research right now?
I must say it's amazing. We've worked on this for many years. Science and medicine takes a long time. There were many hurdles, many challenges, a lot of science to learn, and to finally have FDA approval. And I'm going to be there when we treat our first patient.
All right. That is good to hear. Dr. Weiner, we appreciate everything you're doing, and thank you for taking time to chat with us this morning.
Thanks so much.
If you have plans to travel for the Thanksgiving holiday next week, you'll have a lot of company with you on the road or in the air. It's expected to be a busy holiday travel season. NBC News correspondent Carrie Sanders joins us now from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with more on what we can expect this year. Hi, Carrie. Good morning.
Good morning. You know, it's a little noisy out here. It's already getting a little bit of energy. AAA says that if you're going to be traveling, Monday is not only going to be your least expensive day, but it's also going to be your easiest day. But come Tuesday and Wednesday, it's going to be more expensive and potentially chaotic.
Whether you're taking to the sky or hitting the highway, this year, Turkey Day travel is on the rise.
We are excited. Yeah, it's always good to be together.
AAA anticipates more than 53 million Americans will travel over Thanksgiving, a 13% increase from 2020 and nearing pre-pandemic levels. So expect longer wait times at airports and even on the phone with airlines, like this customer who is on hold for more than 3 hours, 40 minutes.
People are going to be traveling for the first time probably since the pandemic, and they're not used to the whole travel experience. So get familiar with your airline check-in procedures. Do the research now, do the planning and planning ahead.
Strict federal protocols are still in effect at airports. And if you're planning on packing some Thanksgiving treats, the TSA says solids like meats, baked goods, and stuffing can be carried on, but anything that can spill, like homemade cranberry sauce, grandma's preserves, or that special wine, should go in a checked bag.
Unruly passenger, we need to get off the airplane.
One issue airports and airlines are monitoring: unruly passengers. More than 5,100 incidents so far this year have been reported to the FAA.
Don't ruin your travel plans. Don't ruin your holiday plans because you couldn't behave for a few hours and couldn't control your temper or control your alcohol.
From the runway to the roadway, those driving may have second thoughts because of fuel prices. Gas Buddy says the average price per gallon on Thanksgiving Day is projected to cost $3.35, more than $1 higher than 2020. And in California, Sticker Shock Premium, $6.59 a gallon. But no matter how you plan on traveling to your destination, experts say staying patient and building in extra time is crucial to getting to your celebration safely. The FAA can actually cite those who are unruly $3,700 as a fine for every citation. So that can be expensive if you get a little unruly. And now airlines are taking the names of some of those people who are just showing no sense of civilization on an airplane, and they're putting them on no-fly lists that could last a lifetime. Savannah?
All right, Carrie, I like the way you said that. No sense of civilization, because that is what it is. Carrie, thank you very much, and thanks for being out there in the noise and wind for us.
Sure.
And coming up, your guide to talking turkey around the dinner table this holiday season.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of civilization, you can ask about your guests, how you can ask about your guests or loved ones' vaccination status without creating a scene. What's up next? Time for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
CNBC's Bertha Coombs is back with us. Hey, Bertha.
Hey guys, so there might be a little bit of a chill going on in Silicon Valley. The Senate has voted to confirm Jonathan Kanter, a longtime Google critic, to head the Justice Department's antitrust division. Kanter has represented tech companies such as Yelp and Microsoft in lawsuits accusing Google of anti-competitive behavior. He will now lead several government cases against the sector, including a lawsuit that alleges Google has a monopoly in the digital ad market. Target is raising its sales forecast for the year after the retailer beat earnings estimates. Americans apparently are getting an early start on their holiday shopping. Major retailers like Target, Walmart, and Amazon have launched promotional deals weeks in advance of Black Friday, which is only a week from this Friday, by the way, as demand for seasonal items soar and companies try to limit the impact from shipping and other supply chain issues. Meantime, Amazon is going to stop accepting Visa credit cards in the UK because of a dispute over fees. Amazon is telling customers that they won't be able to use their card starting in mid-January, blaming the high fees Visa charges to process transactions. Shoppers will still be able to use Visa debit cards and other credit cards from MasterCard and American Express. Visa says it's disappointed with the move and will continue to work on a resolution. It's really interesting because it used to be American Express that people didn't use because their fees were so high. This is one of those things that is just a constant now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no kidding. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Bertha.
Across the country, inflation is hitting small businesses. It's becoming clear that customers are having to pay the price.
Yeah, so will these mom and pop shops be able to make it out to the other side? NBC News Now correspondent Priscilla Thompson explains.
So this is a almost $19 jar of tomato sauce. Yep. How much did it used to be?
I think I used to retail that for about $12.
Small business owner Greg Morris thought the worst days of the pandemic were behind him.
I thought being closed during COVID was the hardest thing that I would ever experience, but being open after COVID blows that out of the water.
Now the owner of the Oaks Gourmet Market and Cafe in California is facing another challenge.
I pay now for the price of bacon what I used to pay for steak.
Inflation is at its highest rate in 31 years, surging 6.2% in October compared to last year. That's on top of supply chain issues and a labor shortage.
Things are just getting more and more expensive and harder to get. I have to pass it on to my customers.
Customers like Megan Kaltendak, a regular at the neighborhood market, who has also noticed a change.
Coffee is a little more expensive. Gas was absolutely higher. Just everyday dinners were like a little pricier than they were before. It was noticeable.
Data released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics last month shows meat, poultry, and fish jumping 12%. Gas prices up almost 50% compared to last year. Even so, the increased prices haven't stopped the 28-year-old art director from visiting her neighborhood coffee shop.
It doesn't bother me. We know where the inflation's coming from, so we're happy to support small businesses.
This sentiment is seen in the nationwide numbers, too. New data released by the Commerce Department shows retail sales are strong, up 1.7% over just the last month, even as consumers battle inflation.
34, 37.
Asia Phoenix owns Bestie's Vegan Paradise near Hollywood. The store hasn't had to raise prices for customers, but says keeping shelves stocked is a problem.
80% of the brands that we support here are small, Black-owned, woman-owned businesses, and they're the ones who are calling us, because they're having trouble with their increased costs, being able to stay in the market.
Yet another obstacle for business owners still struggling to recover.
Can you survive like this?
No, I can't.
All right, our thanks to Priscilla Thompson for that report.
The holidays are just around the corner, and after a lack of in-person celebrations last year, some of us are feeling a little anxious as we prepare to host or attend the first family get-together since the pandemic started, nearly 2 years ago.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And I'm hosting my first Thanksgiving, so I am certainly anxious. So for tips on how to bring in the holidays safely this year, we're joined by our friend, who you all know, NBC News investigative and consumer correspondent Vicki Nguyen. All right, so we know that we just got these CDC guidelines on how to do this safely. What do they tell us?
Hey, good morning. Yes, so they tell us that you need to be really straightforward with your guests about what the gatherings are. That vaccination continues to be the best offense and defense when it comes to getting together in person. The setting really matters, right? Let people know that outdoors is going to be safer. So if that is an option for you, that's where you want to be gathering. Something we do want to talk about as far as etiquette, because I think a lot of people ask us about this. The idea is, can you say, hey, are you vaccinated or not? Yes, it's becoming a very common question, and etiquette experts say just be straightforward with it. I'm fully vaccinated. Are you? We want to figure out, how to do the risk assessment for our family. So don't be shy about asking that.
So it's not prying or being rude if you ask that?
They may not answer, and that's okay. And you can take that as an answer if you don't get a response and act accordingly. Now, the key is if you are hosting, as you are, be very clear. Put that invitation out well in advance. Let people know what to expect. Hey, we want vax guests only. No, we're having mixed guests. We're doing masking. We're not doing masking. That way people can self-select whether they want to come to your thing. Now, this is interesting. What happens when you get to a gathering and nobody's following the rules? It's not what you expected. If you're the host, then you get to say, hey, everybody, remember the invite I sent out? These were the expectations. Please, let's everybody get on board. If you are a guest, Elaine Swan, she owns her own etiquette school. She told us, you go up to the host one-on-one and say, hey, listen, this isn't what you said. We were supposed to be doing X. I see people are doing Y. Give the host a chance to fix it. If they don't, this is where you just say, you know what? I would love to stay longer. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm going to go ahead and bounce. No drama. Just exit yourself. It's done. Bye, girl. Bye.
Go ahead and bounce. Also, I guess the important part of this, too, is that conversation, for the most part, has to be happening before. So think about it before you head there. If you're hosting, think about letting people know before they're coming over.
Absolutely. And then you know what to do now if it's awkward in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, what about tips for us? Because also let's tap into your consumer side here. Yeah. Many of us preparing to travel but might not have actually made those plans yet. Maybe you don't know what you're going to have off from work, so you haven't booked. Any tips on how to get a deal?
So technically, last-minute deals right now for Thanksgiving, the week before a major holiday, is a good time to travel. It's really the day before the major holiday or the day after that's going to be the most expensive. If you can travel on the holiday, you'll find a deal that way. When you're going to third-party sites, just be careful because you can find a great deal, but if you have to cancel last minute, good luck getting the refund. It will be challenging. So booking directly with an airline or a hotel is always best. Right now, hotels are going to be a better bet than home shares, which typically tend to be more expensive around the vacation time. And the last thing I want to say is the FBI just came out with a scam warning saying, watch out. This is a prime time for scammers to try to get you with a free giveaway or to say, hey, we've got this deal for you. So if you get a robocall, a text, or an email from someone you don't expect, hang it up or delete that message right away. If it's too good to be true, it probably is.
All right,
Absolutely.
It's that time of year.
Yeah, it is. We just tried to actually,
there.
we had looked into a hotel that we got a pop-up ad for that has since closed down.
There you
go.
go.
It's not, you know, I don't know what we would have been booking.
Be very careful with companies you haven't dealt with before.
Yeah, exactly.
Good, I'm glad you dodged that bullet.
That's right. Well, I have you, who's taught me well.
All right, thank you, Vicki.
Good to see you,
We'll be back with more morning news now right after this. Here's some breaking news this morning. Queen Elizabeth has made her first public appearance since spraining her back over the weekend.
You can see her here at Windsor Castle earlier today, where she received the newly appointed Chief of the Defense Staff. The 95-year-old missed a Remembrance Day service Sunday, you might remember, after spraining her back, according to Buckingham Palace. It was the latest in a series of health issues for Britain's longest reigning monarch. We are all happy to see her back on her feet this morning.
Looks good.
Yes, she does.
All right. All right, it happened 17 years ago, but Super Bowl 38 in Houston will always be remembered more for the halftime show than the actual game. That's the show with Justin Timberlake, Janet Jackson, and the infamous wardrobe malfunction.
Yeah, I'm sure you remember it. Well, now New York Times documentaries, those are the same people who made the framing of Britney Spears documentary, are bringing you Malfunction, the dressing down of Janet Jackson. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin has the details.
Hey, Savannah and Joe. In the early 2000s, a culture war was brewing as pop culture was becoming increasingly progressive. The wardrobe malfunction between a pop icon and a rising pop star in front of 140 million viewers was the match that lit a powder keg. This documentary looks at the events leading up to that incident that the director says she believes was an accident and the fallout that followed. It was one of the most scrutinized moments in network television history.
Planned or not, stunt or not, did the punishment actually fit the crime?
9/16 of a second that damaged the career and legacy of an American icon. Justin Timberlake exposing Janet Jackson's breast to 144 million television viewers.
The thing just became an explosive powder keg, and in the middle of that was this woman who had pioneered her image, and she was punished for it.
Produced by the team behind Framing Britney Spears, the explosive documentary that some argue helped free Britney from her conservatorship, Malfunction, the dressing down of Janet Jackson, takes viewers back 17 years. Why revisit that moment now?
So much happened in between culturally, politically, and socially to us as America that I thought we needed to look at this film through a different lens.
Director Jody Gomes explores the backlash.
And unfortunately, the whole thing went wrong.
The humiliation.
I want to put all that behind me.
Well,
I truly do.
Well, not me.
And the ire of then CBS network head Les Moonves, who demanded in-person apologies from both stars.
And more than anything else, Moonves felt that he had been publicly embarrassed.
Justin Timberlake made the apology.
What occurred was unintentional.
Janet Jackson did not. The Grammys, which were on CBS that year, excluded Jackson, while Timberlake was celebrated.
Her career suffered because of someone whose ego was hurt.
If she had apologized in person like Justin did, would things have been different for her?
She had apologized. She apologized 2 or 3 times. You know, what took place back then wasn't right. Janet's career certainly descended while Justin's career ascended. And that's just something you can't ignore. I think it says a lot about our industry and how we handle ageism. I think it has a lot to do with sexism, and I think it has a lot to do with racism.
Last February, in the wake of the Me Too movement and the Times Britney documentary, Timberlake apologized to both superstars, posting in part, "I understand that I fell short in these moments and in many others, and benefited from a system that condones misogyny and racism."
You'd have to ask those 2 artists if it's enough, because at a certain, level, a pound of flesh was taken from both of those women.
What specifically has changed to get us to this point?
I just think that we have platforms now that allow us to be heard. I just don't think society actually knows what to do with us powerful women, so we just keep powering on.
We reached out to Janet Jackson, Justin Timberlake, and CBS. None of them wanted to comment on the documentary. The documentary is available to stream on Hulu starting today. Joe and Savannah?
All right, fascinating look there. Aaron, thank you so much.
That'll do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news, of course, continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.